Well, you and I had an interesting conversation just a couple weeks ago, and you were talking. We were talking about the relationship between heavy industry, Indigenous people, and I'm always whenever I use that that kind of terminology, Indigenous people are also living besides other communities, and
Mhm.
and they're mixed in. So it's sort of limiting to just say because it's the relationship between heavy industry and the communities around them, which
Mhm.
include the Indigenous people.
Mhm.
Um, but on a general, and we'll dig into it a little more as the show goes. How do you view a mine that's right next to, you know, Bonaparte, or or within an hour's driving
Mhm.
distance? How does sort of, I guess, what is your view, and what do you think the general feel is of the communities that are beside these mines?
Well, I guess it goes back to the generations that have lived in that country or lived in that area for quite a while time, and following the different other industries before the mining industry came into play in our area, ranching industry, the forest
Mm,
industry, obviously were the main employers of that area. So as when the mining industry came in, you got to, back then it was job was a job, and it was an opportunity to have a better lifestyle. And it didn't matter what color your skin was; it was
mm,
just to better your life, so your children have a better life. And I figure, when you see the pipelines and everybody comes in, it's almost a double-edged sword for indigenous communities now, depending on where their economic development is. And there are some very keen communities that followed suit and started doing the due diligence of following the economic growth in their communities, depending on what industries were around them. For example, my community, definitely and some of my family are involved in that mining industry that work in there. So, again, it's not something, it's more of an individual choice now versus it was a community standstill with it.
yeah.
So, definitely different views now from a leadership role where I was in as a counselor for 2 years. How do you stand with these industries that come into your territory? How do you consult? Where do you come from? So again, it's the community values, and again, if you're an economic provider in your community or a driver in that community, it's really going to showcase where your community is going to be with these industries.